has been lately observed that there has been a lot of interest shown with respect to knowing about Buddhism. People generally ask the question as to what this whole doctrine is about and what does this religion really want to convey. The fact of the matter is that this religion or this doctrine is really a little bit different than most others. And it is with respect to this that this doctrine shows the way as to how life should be led in such a manner that should fulfill this life with lot of happiness, and when we depart from this life, then there is some more of that happiness waiting for us in some other world. Today, we are going to touch upon some of the aspects of that kind of way of life that we commonly share, and we are no different from each other. For example, our lives are full of chores, events, which keep us extremely busy in many ways. And being so, we are rushing in many directions, sometimes at the same time, which is practically looks very impossible. Now, with that being the case, we are mentally and physically both, we are very much stressed. So today we are going to address that subject as to why our mental stress, which is even worse than the physical stress, and in fact it contributes to the physical stress. We should have that kind of stress. Why is it there? And then how can we eliminate that so that that stress disappears? Once there is no stress, there is nothing but happiness. There is a balance in life, there is calmness, and there is a lot of peace. So this is the subject that we are going to address today. The other name of this stress is tension. And tension in our minds is no stranger to any one of us. We have more than our share of this unwanted state of mind. Actually, there are many external circumstances which are constantly surrounding us and which have a lot of bearing on our state of mind of tension at all times. In fact, the outside happenings in our lives are fully responsible for how we feel. And there are plenty of annoying events which cause us to feel much stressed out. The whole subject of why we are stressed is an interesting subject to analyze and understand. Probably, if we understand the causes of our disturbances, we will overcome being stressed. And as we get to that stage of knowing the causes, we do something about them so that we can live more happily. In our modern life, especially in this affluent country, we spend good deal of our time shopping. When we walk around in the stores, our eyes get a sumptuous feast of all kinds of modern articles which have a great allurement for us. For example, the electronic gadgets are heaped in front of us. Most recent designs of these articles of modern day technology, which range from cell phones to computers to video players and recorders, high definition and plasma televisions, they all beacon us with their full force and sort of plead with us to own them. And when we do bring them home, they present us with myriads of problems, starting with just setting them up. Those of you who have computers, and many of us have them, know so well how the associated problems with their running drives us crazy quite frequently. There are all kinds of bugs, viruses, and glitches which commonly infest these little monsters, and their appearances swallow lots of our time and energy and give us a good deal of frustration and headache. We all have experienced this at many times. This all begins by our visit to the store. It began with letting these things appear before our eyes. Through the doors of our eyes, our minds came under the attack of yearning for them. Eventually, we gave in to our desire and brought them home. This is true for everything. When we hear a good music, we want to have it so that we can listen to it all the time. The whole thing is the continuous play of our senses. Our senses provide the doors for the necessary intake of information and deliver it to our minds. Our minds will process it and immediately set into motion the thoughts of having them. This is in our nature to impulsively want things that we think are pleasant and attractive. All of those shiny and beautiful things presented to us to see, hear, smell, touch, or taste have a forceful effect on our impulsive nature. We have the burning flames of desire in our eyes, ears, noses, tongues, and body touches. We want all of the things and more of them. This process of our wants never stops. Thus, the yearning in our minds never stops. It is an ongoing process. Some of you may say that we need things in life. So what is wrong about it? It is quite true that we need things for our life. The problem arises when we extend beyond our needs. We never restrict ourselves to the basic needs. We also embark upon our comparison with other people. If they have something, we must have it too. Each time we buy something, we keep it for a while, and then it conveniently finds its way to our garage, and it is already replaced by something else. Our garages provide us with plenty of evidence of our spendthrift nature. Such indulgences bring us financial woes. So, if we are wise, we should curb our passions towards all of the visible objects of the world. This act on our part will lessen greed within us. When the greed is reduced, the mind is liberated. When we stop feeding fuel into the fire, it is bound to diminish in size and stature. If we keep feeding our senses, their appetite is like a fire, and it keeps getting stronger and stronger. Well, our senses do need some food. We cannot deny them the required food totally. That will be starvation. But we must feed them with some degree of control. Feed them enough to keep them healthy, but never cross the limits. If we act as their masters and not allow them to be our masters, then there is no danger at all. When we exert our control on our senses, we make mental progress. The control of senses comes by guarding our thoughts. Evil thoughts are always ready to derail our good efforts. In the Buddhist doctrine, it is said that the man who lives brooding over pleasures, unrestrained in the senses, immoderate in food, lazy and inert, him verily Mara overthrows as wind a weak tree. The word Mara often implies the Buddhist personification of all that is evil and that which binds the man to the rounds of births and deaths. So, even if we understand now that by restraining our senses, we will be on track to have a peaceful mind, the task of establishing control on senses is not at all an easy job. We all know how our minds generate evil inclinations with ease, while directing the mind to remove the unwholesome thoughts is not easy at all. It is said that a sage is like a tortoise. A tortoise promptly draws in all its limbs on sensing a danger. Likewise, a sage shuts off all the sense doors when an evil influence wants to creep in. But how many of us are sages and saints? Most likely, none of us are in that category. We easily stoop to our temptations. That is in line with our general nature. We cannot offer any resistance when a seemingly pleasant opportunity, which is impregnated with evil effects and bad consequences, presents itself in front of us. So, what should we do? How can we control our senses? Is it done by shutting our eyes and ears and not let the senses sense the worldly objects? No, certainly not that way. There is once an episode that took place when a very young man, a Brahmin, came to Buddha. This young man was a disciple of a well-known guru who was teaching how to control the senses to his pupils. The Buddha asked this young man, "In what way does your teacher teach control of the senses?" The young man replied that his teacher advises to not see material form with the eyes, not hear sounds with the ear, and thus one can control one's senses. In that case, Buddha said, the blind and the deaf must have controlled their senses, for the blind man does not see material form with his eyes, and a deaf man hears a sound with his ears. The Buddha has repeatedly emphasized the training of the mind to subdue these senses. He points out that there is but one of the greatest of all forces that plays havoc with us, and it is the strong and excessive amount of greed within us. Where does this greed come from? According to Buddha, it comes from ignorance. We, being ignorant, are like as being blind. This greed or lust is the mother of hatred and all the suffering. We all know very well that all kinds of powerful weapons, such as bombs, have been invented. What was the need to have such destructive weapons? Well, there was the need, however, to satisfy our greed that put the man in pursuit of inventing such diabolical weaponry. The inherent lust to amass wealth, have power over others, became the sole motivating force to acquire those dangerous and mighty weapons. And when one country had acquired this power, others wanted to follow suit as well. Thus, the result of this madness is quite visible to us in our own time. Our whole world is in the grip of turmoil, war, hatred, and tremendous suffering. This is exactly what Buddha meant when he said that the underlying evil force of greed and lust within us leads to bondage and suffering. Some people say that Buddha is spreading the message which is obsessed with suffering, and it denotes pessimism. Contrary to that, it is actually the reality that the Buddha is pointing out. We will be totally blind to oversight this and attribute it to some sort of pessimism. Time and again, he has cautioned that we become slaves to our minds if we do not check the longings which remain ever ready to sway our minds. Man, in his worst form, is worse than a beast. But man, in his best form, has the nature of divine. He can develop spirituality while a beast cannot. The qualities which develop spirituality in man are latent. They need to be waken up and developed. They need to be brought up to the conscious level. Any man who does not examine his own mind and does not develop positive and wholesome thoughts, or does not discard the negativity, has really wasted his existence as a human being. The Buddha, therefore, is very emphatic about controlling the mind in order to control the senses. He advises to remain vigilant and alert all the time. If an evil thought invades the mind, the practice of staying vigilant helps in stopping it right away. This is how he says that a sage would shut the doors of his senses when any evil influence appears. Now, it should be clear that there is absolutely nothing that can be achieved by merely wishing for it. Right and energetic efforts, strong discipline, firm resolve are the requisites to achieve anything worthwhile. Only the sincere and zealous can achieve. The rest watch these achievers from the sidelines. Buddha does not merely speak the words of motivation. He actually lived and practiced what he preached. When we see him, it is quite clear that he had resolved to achieve his goal of enlightenment when he said, "Let my skin, sinews, and bones remain. Let my flesh and blood in the body dry up. Yet there shall be no decrease of energy till that which is to be won by manly strength, energy, and effort is attained." That is how he roused his disciples to action. As we know, it is a monumental task to subdue the senses and free up the mind. And it takes Herculean effort to achieve this. But we know that all of this is a task very much worth to pursue. By so doing, we achieve lifelong happiness. We get rid of our stresses. Our minds are open and free. Our mental powers achieve high levels. Our daily life is full of pleasure and peace. Our productivity increases tremendously. It is quite certain that when we achieve all this, we earn high acclaim and recognition from our fellow human beings. The rest of the worldly things fall in place automatically. We do not have to go running after them. They fall in our lap by themselves. We experience heavenly bliss. There is nothing wanting in our life. Our lives are fulfilled and become rich beyond pleasure, beyond measure. This is not a rosy picture or a figment of mere imagination. It is a reality. It is something that we can practically experience ourselves. In our discussion, we have mentioned about the training of the mind. The Buddha has given us extensive directions as to how to have fuller and richer life here in this very existence. We will bring his teachings little by little in simple to understand terms in our future programs. We hope that all that is said so far makes some sense for you. It is only by practice that one can progress. There is no need to associate all this with a so-called religion. It is to learn the best way how we should lead a happy, prosperous, and peaceful life. We thank you for listening and watching. We will see you again here. May you be well, happy, and peaceful.